Hey guys, so today we need to talk a little bit about the US dollar. Why? Well, two things. First of all, it's been in the headlines. We've gotten a lot of questions on the dollar. That's number one, to clarify things, but also number two, because it actually is very important to understand what, because as the reserve currency and as the currency that a lot of commodities and things are priced in, it is important to watch the currency so you understand moves that happen from a correlation perspective to other asset classes. So let me get right to the chart and give you a couple ideas. First of all, we're going to go into our market rover here, and you may not be able to see it super well, but down here we have what's called a correlation matrix. And in this correlation matrix, what we do, we keep a 10-day average correlation between different sectors of the equity market, but also between some of the more important asset classes. So for example, what's the correlation on a 10-day basis between gold and stocks, or the dollar and gold, or stocks and bonds, that kind of thing. And so what I want to point out to you, we've obviously had a big run in the metals, the silvers and the golds, as I alluded to in a video last week, and we remain very bullish to the longer term lens on gold. Think short term overbought. But if you look at a 10-day correlation between the dollar and gold, so I'm going to go dollar, UUP is the ETF that tracks that. I'm going to go over to gold, and you can see I know you may not be able to see it very well, but it's negative 0.87. That's right here. In other words, we've seen the dollar go down over the past few weeks, and let me go over here. This is the short-term weekly chart. I'm going to make it a daily chart for a second. This is the daily chart of the dollar index, and the dollar's gone lower, gold has gone higher, thus there's an inverse relationship, right? Now, we're increasing of the opinion that the dollar index is probably short-term oversold. Now, if this inverse correlation on a 10-day basis holds versus, say, gold, and even versus equities, where there's an inverse correlation, then if the dollar were to bounce, what do you think gold, maybe silver, and maybe equities are going to do on a short-term basis? Well, they should do the opposite of what they've done over the past few weeks, which means they should probably cool off somewhat, right? So the dollar index is unbelievably important because it tracks the dollar and this inverse relationship between dollar and sometimes commodities. It's not always in inverse versus commodities, but sometimes it is. Sometimes versus stocks, sometimes even versus bonds. Emerging markets, right, things that are priced in dollars, is really important. To give you an idea on this, I made I have the daily chart. I'm going to keep it very, very simple. You can see this yellow line, that's your 21-day moving average. Currently, the dollar index is quite well below there. We think from a momentum perspective, probably quite stretched. Various readings you can look at, MACDs and so on and so forth. If you go over to the weekly chart and zoom out a little bit more, this is what you come back with. You can see a dollar index that has, for the most part, reached the low end of its uptrend since 2000, and I'm going to call it 2008. We could think of it, make it a logarithmic chart. That doesn't really change anything, but for the most part, the range you can see has kind of been this, and so we've reached a lower end again. Now, of course, you could make the argument that we're going to break lower, and we may ultimately do that in the dollar. I don't know. I'm currently working through that in-house with our analysis team, but for the most part, we think we could be at least short-term oversold in the dollar. If we see a bounce in the dollar, I would think that should translate negatively from a short-term trading perspective, meaning days, maybe weeks, to the price of gold, silver, and possibly even stocks. So anyway, folks, as always, I hope this was helpful. Give us a thumbs up, like if you enjoyed this, subscribe, share what we do, and I'll see you guys in the next video.